we'll get started, just to grab your attention, we've put this slide on first with the quote, "I can't get to where I need to be without this programme." And I'm going to speak more about that in a while. But first of all, who are we? Bit of background about who we are. So here you can see the three of us. I'm Jill Ingham, and I have the great pleasure of speaking to people like yourselves on a daily basis, individuals who know that they need to understand and study management and leadership to get to where they want to be, and also learning and development specialists who are interested in retaining their talented managers and assuring the succession of their organisation. It's great to see so many sectors represented today, which is typical. The programme has attracted a very wide variety of sectors over the 4 or 5 years we've been running it. So this is fairly typical. Kieran, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Absolutely. Thanks, Jill. So I'm Kieran. I work with Jill on the apprenticeship programs here. I'm head of client relations and glad to be joining you today. Abby.
Hello, everyone. So I'm Abby. I'm the marketing officer for executive education. So I work with both Jill and Kieran to promote our apprenticeship programs.
Thanks, colleagues. Right, before we talk about the actual apprenticeship, for those of you who don't know, we thought we'd better talk about who we are, where we work, and why would you select our apprenticeship. And we can see that University of Manchester is a Russell Group university, obviously on the left. In fact, next year we'll celebrate our 200 years bicentenary, so there's lots of plans going ahead for that. You can see on the left some of the amazing things that took place at this university, and on the right I'm sure you'll have heard of some, if not all, of those illustrious alumni. You might be thinking, well, that's fantastic. What does it mean for me and my future and my studies? Well, the point being, we always try and tap into this history of innovation. We draw on our academic faculty of experts and world-leading researchers to input into these programs. We've been here since 1965, one of the first two business schools in the country, in what is known as the original modern city of Manchester, and very pleased with our reputation worldwide. We have 5 centres across the globe. Dubai, Singapore are just a couple of them, working with businesses over there, and we're always using what we learn from them into our programme. So it's a two-way process. And also we can reach across to other faculties and schools on campus. So artificial intelligence, civil engineering, aviation, whatever is needed for a programme, we've got access to it. Again, you might be thinking, well, that's great. But the point being that all of this fantastic research into business and management has been designed to allow you to use it straight away in your current job role. And more of that later. We're part of only 1% of business schools around the globe which have the triple accreditation, coveted accreditation. Kieran's now going to talk about, what is a senior leader apprenticeship and who's it for and how is it funded?
Thank you, Jill. Okay, so hopefully if you're here, you have a little bit of an understanding of what a senior leader apprenticeship is. But just to recap very briefly, so it's a funded program. So there is funding available for this, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But it's designed to get people from where they are today as a middle manager to develop into a more senior and more strategic leader. Now, there's 3 things we'll talk about, these things called knowledge, skills, and behavior. These are the things that identify you as a senior leader. A consultative group met and set about 46 different levels that you have to achieve across these knowledge, skills, and behavior to call yourself a senior leader. And now it's an apprenticeship because it's something that you study whilst you work. If you approach this with the thinking that I'm going to work and then I'm going to study, it's going to be quite tricky. This is an integrated study and working program. So who is it for? just touched on that very briefly. Chances are, if you're already a CEO, a CFO, a COO, or anybody in that C-suite, this probably isn't the program for you. If you are a middle to senior manager, you've already had some experience, you've got a few years, 3 to 5 years of managing and leading people, and you aspire to be in one of those more senior positions, more strategic positions one day, then this is probably the course for you, because it's designed to get you from where you are to where you need to be. You're probably very good operationally already, very competent. This is a program designed to get you operating at a more strategic level. In terms of funding, this program is funded exclusively for businesses and organizations with people working in England. So it's not an international program, it's exclusively for people working in England. Your organization, if they're a large organization and their payroll is larger than £3 million a year, chances are they're already paying into this thing called a levy pot. And that's the pot that gets used to pay for this training. If you work for a smaller organisation and your annual payroll bill is less than £3 million, don't worry. The government has set aside a fund, and about 95% of the cost of this course will be covered by that government fund. Your organisation would have to pay that remaining 5%, and the cost of the programme at £14,000 means that 5% is about £700. Now, there's also a pathway onto a master's. This program takes you up to what's called a PG diploma or postgraduate diploma. There is an opportunity to go beyond and study further for a few more months and gain a master's from the University of Manchester. But to do that, that's another £4,000. And unfortunately, that can't be funded through that apprenticeship levy mechanism that I referenced there. So either it would be yourself or your employer paying that £4,000 top up for your master's fee. So we covered a little bit about the program, who it's for. What I also wanted to bring your attention to is the fact that it's been redesigned. So the program's been redesigned because every 4 years, a program has to go through a renewals process. So what's different this time? Well, the content's newer, it's more topical. There are some integrated breaks, so we put in breaks for Christmas, Easter, and the summer holidays. It's a shorter program. Older programs have run about 24 months. This is about 15 months worth of teaching, plus about 3 months worth of assessment, so it's about 18 months altogether. And it's actually some of the more relevant, more topical, more latest research. So we look at leadership in a post-COVID era. But for more details now on the actual content and the units on the program, I'm going to hand back to my colleague, Jill.
Thank you, Kieran. So, right, so this is the teaching content, if you like. What are you going to be taught before we get on to about your own personal development? So the programme is divided into 6 taught units over the 15 months, and each is 10 weeks, and you're only doing one at once. And as you can see, we start with leadership because we believe, everything starts with yourselves. So we're going to take a step back and think, what are we like as a manager or leader? Are there different ways of doing things that I might not know about? Am I happy with the way I'm managing and leading? That's what we pull apart. Am I practicing ethical and values-based leadership? To what extent am I embracing diversity or thinking about the company culture? We then move on to Unit 2, which looks at your organisation. Where does your organisation sit within its sector, within the world even? Who influences your organisation, and who do you influence as an organisation? What's your strategic thinking? How are you using information, and how are you making your decisions? What's your marketing like and your branding? So that's Unit 2. Unit 3, we look at the people in your organisation. How are they behaving? What's the structure of it? How engaged are they? To what extent are we planning for the future? Are people working entirely at home, or are they hybrid, or are they back in the office? Inclusivity and diversity. All these issues affecting our employees are examined in Unit 3. Unit 4 looks at innovation and disruptive technologies. Big data. Are we making as much use of that? Are we thinking about it? We need to be, as a senior leader, we need to be harnessing the expertise in our organisation to help us make decisions and innovate. Now, Unit 5, we shouldn't panic at this one. We're not trying to make anybody into a chartered accountant. This is finance and accounting for leaders, you know, reading a balance sheet, understanding the performance financially of the organisation, having the confidence to ask questions of the experts in that department so that you can be informed. And then finally, Unit 6, of course, we have to pay attention to sustainability and environmental and social issues. So all of that is the focus of Unit 6. So that's what you're going to learn about during the programme. But what about your own development? So if we just look at this slide on the left-hand side, the purple side, how do we know what you need? We use an amazing business tool called the Hogan Psychometric Assessment in 3 parts. It's done online in the style of a questionnaire. It takes about 45 minutes. And it will unpick your experience and your skills and your behaviours. And these are encapsulated in something called knowledge, skills and behaviours, KSBs. And every apprenticeship has got these KSBs embedded in them, because these are the things that you need to address to become a senior leader. And you might be thinking, well, who decided what they would be? It was a trailblazer group 5 or 6 years ago of top employers, top universities and professional institutes. They sat down and they thought, what are the knowledge, skills and behaviours needed of a great senior leader? So that's all well and good, and you'll have covered some of it, of course, in your career, and other areas you won't have had the opportunity to address. So it's not all down to you. We are going to provide you with a practice-based tutor, a really highly skilled person that we provide to guide you through the whole apprenticeship. And that person will receive your Hogan analysis, and in confidence with you, you'll have a meeting online to go through it and work out what needs addressing as you go through the programme. And those issues, those areas you will keep addressing throughout the programme, and they constitute Unit 7 and Unit 8, evading and going through the whole programme. And you'll be looking for ways to address those areas and also how to evidence them. Otherwise, how does anybody know? How does the assessor know that you've actually been across to the finance department and spent a couple of hours shadowing someone, or gone and spoken to somebody in marketing to understand how they're making use of social media, for example? There is a wide variety of types of assignment. We've gone, as Kieran said, gone to a lot of trouble to vary the way people are assessed. So it's not just all writing, there's presentations and discussions, as you can see. And as you go through, you're building your own portfolio of evidence. And e-portfolio, we explain all about it. And you're looking to sort of tick off, if you like, areas of your development that you haven't so far had chance to address. Every now and then we stop and we tack a day onto the 2-day workshop in the building behind me, and we say, okay, we've been on the programme 3 months, 4 months, whatever. How are we doing? Are we getting these bits of experience evidenced? What does our portfolio look like? Are we building the best portfolio we can to show off to the end point assessor? And then we'll take stock after the 15 months, as I say, and polish that up. Make sure you've addressed all the knowledge, skills and behaviours you're supposed to be doing. And then you go through something called Gateway. And again, we're checking, has this learner, by the way, we don't call you apprentice, we call you learner. Has this learner fulfilled all of these examples for his or her portfolio? Did they already have English and maths at grade A to C, or have they undertaken the functional skills with us to get their level 2? Let's make sure it's all there. Once that's all in place, you go through this gateway and you sit down with your line manager, your work-based mentor, as we call them, or somebody that's supporting you in your organisation, and you look at what project, what business proposal you could work on, what needs doing in your organisation, what is a challenge or an opportunity, and you'll have all the tools. You'll be the best person to do it. You write a short summary, 500-word summary of what it's going to be, and then the actual piece of work you'll do in the 12 weeks after the 15 months of teaching and produce 4,000 words. So you're not being supervised by us, if you like, by this time. You're just working with your internal mentor and the professional institute. And then we then send off your business proposal, which, by the way, is a highly usable document. It's not just a theoretical piece to sit on a library shelf. You'll be going to your bosses with it and saying, look at this, these are my recommendations for how to tackle this challenge or make the most of this opportunity. And as we can testify from learners that we've had so far, many of these proposals are implemented. And then you then progress to something called endpoint assessment. What does this look like? So it's not a written exam like we may have done at school, where we just learn everything we've been taught and sit and write it out. We'll do a 15-minute presentation about your proposal, and then you'll have a professional discussion for about an hour. And it should be your opportunity to show off why you came on the programme, what you've learned, what you found really thrilling, what you found a bit trickier, that sort of thing. And then you get the Postgraduate Diploma in Senior Leadership, Senior Leader Apprenticeship. And before the endpoint, we will have asked you who might be interested in continuing and doing another bigger project to get the MSc, but we don't ask you that to start with. So that's how your personal development meshes with the content of the programme. We're now going to look at the whole lot on one slide. So it looks an awful lot, but hopefully we've already broken it down. The first thing that will happen is you come in for a one-day induction day in the building I'm sitting in front of in November, and we go through everything on that day. We answer all your questions. We deal with some of the terminology that's built into the apprenticeship, practice-based tutors, work-based mentors, etc. We answer your questions, and we explain something about the assessments, the assignments, because that's what's really bothering a lot of people about what do these assignments look like. And as I say, then you do the Hogan psychometric and so on. There's just a couple of headlines to drive home at this point. So it is two things in one. You do emerge with a level 7 master's level postgraduate diploma, fabulous, from the University of Manchester. But first and foremost, it is the apprenticeship. Nobody's going to walk off with that diploma if they haven't addressed the knowledge, skills and behaviours and completed and produced a really nice portfolio to show the assessor. By the way, you also become chartered manager status with the Institute of Leadership and Management. Finally, on this section, what does a typical unit look like? You might be thinking, well, how am I going to cover all of that in 10 weeks? What's the process? So each unit starts online with an 1-hour tutorial, e-tutorial, and there's 3 of those over the first 6 weeks. And these are put in your calendar, so they are protected. You must try and attend them as far as you can, but if something happens and you miss the tutorial that's scheduled for 11 a.m. on the 3rd Wednesday of the month, it doesn't disappear. You can access the recording, but you can't obviously speak on it. And so that everyone is prepared for these tutorials, you will have been sent some pre-work, which typically is a couple of short articles to read and some questions to think about, so that everybody comes on these online tutorials buzzing with ideas about, well, where I work, blah, blah, and where I used to work, it was like this. And there'll be lots of group discussion after a sort of 15-minute intro from the person running that unit. That goes on for 6 weeks, 3 of those, and then you come in to the business school here behind me for a 2 or 3 day workshop, 9 to 5. What happens on those? This is where you pull apart what you've heard on the tutorials. You pull apart the content of the unit and you say, well, hang on a minute, where I work, it's slightly different because, and you can get help to sort of overcome those sort of hurdles, or you can share with the other people something that's worked very well, excuse me, and of course with the lecturers as well. Final headline statement. As I said, this is not a course where you're trying to learn everything. You decide for each unit what you can viably use in your current job role. So there aren't case studies about Amazon and Starbucks and all these other things. It's always, well, that was very interesting. I really liked that. I thought it was excellent. Can't really use it right now in my current job, but I'm glad I know about it because this will stay with you for life, all these materials. Alternatively, wow, I wish I'd thought of that. Wow, what a great way of looking at this problem we've got. That's what I'm going to take from this unit, and that's what I'm going to write about in my assessment. So as long as you do that, there isn't right and wrong. And as long as you adhere to the parameters, the word count, or the style that we want you to adhere to. Okay. The next slide, so that was a lot of information. The next slide is about what you all are thinking, typically. Well, that looks great, Jill, but I have never studied online. I've only done it in classroom, or I'm worried about, will I get the time? Not sure whether I can do this and my job. Well, as we can see on there, your organisation, as long as they agree, and they do need to have to provide a letter of support to get you on the programme, your mentor will make sure that you get that 6 hours a week average during work time. What this is not come to us every Friday, 20% of my working week, I'm going to go to the business school every Friday, as if you're a kind of 17-year-old apprentice welder. It doesn't work like that. It's very much blended into your job. We've got plenty of people doing really well on the apprenticeship who didn't go to university at all, or they went and didn't really feel particularly academic and just scraped through and had a good time. We've got people who haven't studied for years, whatever. But what I tend, when people worry about writing the assignments, I ask them, do you write a business report quite often? Oh, yeah. Yeah, I have to do that every week or every month. And I go, well, there you are. If you can do that in reasonable English, then we teach you, how to kind of make it a bit more academic, shall we say. And there's loads of support. We're now going to look at what a couple of people have said about the apprenticeship and their thoughts about that. So, just taking a breath for a moment. Right, this is what somebody who's currently on the postgraduate diploma, I'll leave you to read it. Thanks, Kieran. And then the next one is from somebody who's running, who's sent somebody on the program. In fact, there's a couple of people from Aspire. So hopefully that kind of reinforces the fact that both from the learner's point of view and the employer, that we're doing something right with this postgraduate diploma apprenticeship. Kieran's now going to talk about entry requirements and the support that is available.
Thank you, Jill. So there's a couple of routes of entry. The first one is if you already have a degree at 2, 1 or above and 3 years of management experience, that's a route for you. If you don't have a degree or have a degree at 2 or a third, we look for 5 years of management experience, and that's the second route of entry. So degree, no degree, you've still got a route of entry, and more importantly, you don't have to have had a degree in leadership or management. In fact, most people don't. Most people have got a completely unrelated subject in their degree or experience in a completely unrelated area. But it's really important that you fill out all of your eligibility criteria so we can make sure we can get the funding for you, because you can't come on the program without funding. An odd element that's worth considering is that we need proof of GCSE or equivalent in maths and English to grade C or equivalent. Now, for many of you, myself included, my GCSEs were a very, very long time ago. Don't worry, we can get you help in terms of getting the original certificates. The point is this, is you've got to be able to access all of the information that's available through the programme. So the government say to us, people have to be operating at a level of equivalent to GCSE grade 6 in maths and English. That way you can access all of the information. You're not disadvantaged. If you don't have those certificates, or you can never find them, or you didn't achieve those grades, don't worry. We have what's called a functional skills program that runs in parallel. You don't have to stop studying on the program. You can take this course in parallel to your studies, and that will take you through in a more age appropriate way to get you to the place where you're GCSE equivalent for C in maths and English. We have some systems if you've got international qualifications, but you're now working in England, don't worry, we can look up those equivalencies for you. A couple of words then on a practice-based tutor and work-based mentor. So this is about support. You're not on this apprenticeship on your own. The most important person is you. Second in that line is going to be your practice-based tutor. This is somebody that we assign to you for the duration of the programme. They're there, dedicated to your support and your development. You could talk to them about pastoral concerns you've got, concerns about workshops or academic themes or writing assessments. And every 3 or 4 months, so it's about 12 weeks, you check in with your tutor and say, okay, let's remember where I started against those KSBs, those levels that I need to be at, all 46 of them. Oh, I can see we're doing well here, and they'll help guide you look at other areas in the program, other areas in your business experience to try and gain those extra pieces of evidence that say, well, yeah, I'm now at the top of that K, S or B in terms of where I'm meant to be. And I've got evidence to show I can do that strategic thing, whether it's writing a strategic plan or developing and implementing a strategic plan. So that's your practice-based tutor. You can access them pretty much most of the time. A lot of them give out their phone numbers and email addresses, but you will be sitting down with them once every 12 weeks for a review of your progress. At the same time, you need support from your employer. You need somebody, ideally, somebody more senior than you, perhaps your line manager, but it doesn't have to be. If it's your line manager, then they're going to have a good idea of what your workload is, but they may be operating in the same department as you. A really good work-based mentor is somebody who can kind of promote your cause to learn new things outside of your department. So let's say you work in HR and you need to learn about finance to meet your KSBs. A good work-based mentor will sponsor you to say, okay, I can get you into that finance meeting so you can be exposed to what it looks like on our profit and loss account, our balance sheet. So you can use that as evidence in your portfolio to say you've achieved that KSB. So think carefully about your work-based mentor. This needs to be somebody who's got the time and the inclination and the resources, the connections to put you in places, other places in the organisation, to expose you to those opportunities, to develop those new skills you need to go from a really good middle manager to a really excellent senior manager. Now we're going to talk about something called off-the-job learning, or OTJ. So the good news is you're not expected to hold down completely the full-time job and do all of that work and then study. That doesn't work for anybody. Your employer signs up to this to say they'll give you a minimum equivalent to 6 hours per week. And don't worry, if you've got a busy week at work, you don't have to take it all at once. You could do less in the first week and do more in the second week. But the purpose of this is to ring fence some time for you, dedicated to give you the space to step away from the day job. That's what we mean by off the job, away from your day job, and start getting into those meetings or those projects or those areas or those briefings that you need to top up your knowledge, skills and behavior to go from where you are to where you need to be. So that's a bit about off the job. Next, we're going to look at the applications process. And I would urge people If you haven't done so already, the first thing you need to do is actually complete our online eligibility checker. Now, I believe Abby can put a link in the chat. If you haven't done so already, it takes 5 to 10 minutes. You fill this in, basically asks you a few questions. Within 5 minutes, we should get a steer on whether or not you're eligible for funding. If you are eligible for funding, we can then come to you with your options. If not, then we can signpost you to other programs that might get you where you want to be. Jill, do you want me to carry on talking about applications, or do you want to take over?
No, it's fine. Yeah, I'm just going to say that once you've done that and you look like you're eligible, you can book a Teams call with myself and talk about your personal background and any questions that you have. I can talk you through the whole program again on that call. Yeah, and look at and make sure that it's very important that you speak to your line manager at an early stage and see if they are willing to be your mentor. It doesn't have to be, but it has to be somebody more senior than yourself. But importantly, that they're willing to commit, the thinking time for you, not just saying, oh, yes, it'll be great for the person to be on the programme, because they do have to help you, as Kieran says, get these opportunities within your business to address some of your missing experience. And they have to they will be given a login to our Aptum system as well for them to look at your progress and participate properly on our quarterly review meetings. You also need to fish out your certificates, GCSEs, any degrees, references. Again, not great to leave that till the last minute. People get into a panic because they think their GCSE certificates are in their attic, and when they go and look, they can't find them, and then they think they're at their grandmother's and she can't find them, and all gets a bit stressful. So the earlier the better, we would say. And also, it's in your interest. If you know you want to do this, your company and your boss and everybody are on board, the sooner you do it, the sooner you'll know, the sooner you'll have the interview with us, and the sooner you will know that this is going to be starting for you. Applications will open on the 8th of May. We'll be keeping in touch with everyone in the interim. Don't think you want to remember that. Anybody who has been interested or attended our webinars will be giving keeping in touch with you till then, and then hopefully after the interview you get made an offer. One thing I've realised I haven't said is the, not wishing to put you off, but the seriousness of this commitment. Really thinking carefully, is this the right time for you? Some people want to do this, but sometimes it's a bit premature for them. They're not quite chalked up enough flying hours, as Kieran says, as a manager, and they're better off waiting for a year or two to get that. For other people, it might be a personal situation. Moving house, if you're planning on moving house in the autumn, might not be great to start this apprenticeship in November. Might be better waiting till you're in life beyond that move next April 24, or having another baby, or whatever it is. You need to clear some space to give it your good attention, both domestically and in make your colleagues aware as well that you are seriously, you have to attend the webinars and the workshops. Yeah, so we're just going to recap now. We can answer any questions about applications at the end. Just to recap the whole thing and wrap up our presentation. What's so great about our particular programme? Well, as you've hopefully understood, the programme was redesigned less than a year ago. We've got 2 intakes already on it, and it's for the post-pandemic era. The hybrid working, all the things you'd expect to see for now. It's not an old-fashioned management course from way back. This is spot on what you need now, and addressing all the right knowledge, skills and behaviours and the latest research. The Hogan psychometric is the best tool to find out where you're up to in your working life at the moment. Fantastic study skills. It's only an 18-month commitment, including the project. We know it works. We've already graduated several cohorts wearing their cap and gown in the Great Hall of the university. The facilities are fabulous, as you can see there on that slide. and great networking with other people on your programme. And finally, programme benefits. You'll obviously step up from being an excellent niche manager, functional manager, into a more generic manager aspiring to senior leader, understanding how organisations work across the piece, not just your particular area. You'll definitely feel more confident in senior meetings and play a bigger role in the strategic direction of your organisation. And for learning and development experts, your managers will be buzzing with new ideas and more confident, and that will spin off on other people. We hear that other employees witness the person transforming and think, oh, I wouldn't mind doing that as well. And hopefully it means that you retain those excellent managers. I think that's the end of our actual presentation, and we're delighted to take some questions now. Happy to kick off with Anthony's. Where is it? Anthony wanted to know way back. Can you do the diploma and then defer doing the MSc? Do you have to do it straight after, or can you do it in a few years' time? The answer is wonderfully yes, you can, isn't it? To be honest, I can't remember if you've got up to 3 years or 5 years. Do you know that, Kieran? Don't often get asked it.
I think it's up to 5 years. I think the
Yeah.
difficulty is you've got, if you step off one program, then you can only rejoin when the next master's element is running. Think of it like a bus timetable. You know, if you want to stop in March, maybe the next MSc kind of program starting is in September. So
Yeah.
as Jill says, you're absolutely right. You can take a break. If you want a break, you take a break. But there are probably fewer starts in the year for the master's program. So you might be waiting probably no more than a year, but it may not be immediate that you could actually jump back into the next program.
Yeah, and you do, and Mozamul would like to know, when do you have to commit to that if you think you're going to like doing it? Well, first, we don't ask anybody if they want to do it at the start. We get you started on the PG dip. You have to start chalking up some marks. So around about halfway through, we are going to mention the MSc, maybe after 6 or 8 months. And you sort of say, oh, yes, I could be interested in that. We then have to make sure you're scoring 50% on your assignments, which doesn't seem too taxing. So 50%, not 80 or 70%. So as long as you're not, really struggling and you are understanding the program and enjoying it and flying with it, then yeah, and you're likely to have the money at your disposal, either yourself or your employer, then it's at that point, and you've got the GCSEs and everything. Would Kieran like to answer Ganga's question about being a postgrad already?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And Abby, thank you for putting the comments up in the Q&A as well. Hopefully, folks, you can have a look. There's some stuff in there because there's some other questions you might be interested in yourself. So the question was, I think you're already studying overseas. You're going to finish that course, and then can you apply for the apprenticeship? Unfortunately, the way the apprenticeship is funded, you have to be working for a company and spending at least 50% of your time in England. You don't have to be living in England. You could live in Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, but you have to be working at least 50% of your time for a company based in England. And that's just a quirk of the funding. It's not our rules. There are probably other programs, if you don't fall into that category, that we could signpost you towards. But because of the unique way this program is funded, and this is one of the questions in that eligibility check, we have to ensure that people are spending at least 50% of their working time in England for us to be able to draw down funding for you. And there is no option to pay for this privately. It's pretty much 100% apprenticeship levy funded or nothing. So apologies if that's not the kind of response you were looking for there, Ganga, but we could have a follow-up conversation via email or offline if you like, if you're interested in a similar program, but you don't fall into that category of working in England for 50% of your time. Hopefully that answers some of those questions there.
Yeah, thanks, Kieran. And then we've got a question from Pinkel Dylan. What the actual outcomes are from the programme? Yes, I hope perhaps it wasn't.
Do you want me to pick up on that one?
Yeah, if you want.
We've got available to send to you after this, or indeed on our webpage, we've got the KSBs, the knowledge, skills and behaviour. Ultimately, yes, the programme's got an academic design and there are learning outcomes associated to each one of those individual units. But ultimately, the whole programme is about getting you to where you need to be on all of those KSBs. So, for example, one KSB is: are you practiced and experienced in knowing the difference between coaching and mentoring? So that's an outcome of the program. You would learn how to do that. Similarly, do you know how to develop a strategic plan? That's another one. So probably the best way to answer that question is to look at those KSBs, those 46, because ultimately that's what this program is designed to deliver.
Thanks, Kieran. And also from what you actually also, so you emerge with a nationally recognised Senior Leader Apprenticeship. It's nationally recognised. All employers will understand that. And it's also a postgraduate diploma. So it's a master's level. It is confusing for people who haven't been in higher education very much. And I'm covering here Gerard's question as well. So level 6 is a degree. BSc in electronics engineering or BA in history, Bachelor of Arts, BSc in arts. That's a degree, a first degree, level 6. This course is a step up from that. It's a postgraduate after you've graduated, but I know the word diploma can also sound, like I can understand why it might sound like that is less than a degree, but it isn't. It's postgraduate diploma. It's got the word postgraduate, after you graduate diploma. So it is at master's level after your degree. And then finally, the Institute of Leadership and Management. So it's actually 3 things in one. So it's been amazingly designed to embrace all of that as you go through it. You don't need to worry about that. It's enmeshed and woven. The kind of academic learning is woven throughout the apprenticeship, shall we say. So it's quite cleverly designed. Hope that answers Gerard's question.
I think that's a good one to just reiterate, though, Jill, that diploma, people normally think of it as something below a degree. And because this is a postgraduate diploma, it's called a diploma just because of the number of hours it takes to achieve. It's the same level of robustness, of academic rigor as a master's. It's just in terms of the units you study, the units that you accumulate, and the number of hours of study, it is more at a master's. You don't jump up in a level of difficulty in terms of study. You just study it for longer, and you do an extra unit at the end with your dissertation, and that's what makes it a master's. Removing that, it's still the same level of rigor and expertise and study as a master's.
Yeah, and Ganga's other question, yes, you absolutely can apply for this if you've already got a master's level qualification. You can have a master's in ancient history or a master's in electronics engineering, and somebody outside of here who doesn't know might say, well, why do you want to do this master's level qualification? It's because the master's you may already have is quite specialized, isn't it? And if you aspire to be a senior leader in an organization, you're going to have to learn about business and management and the language that they speak and organizations. And so we do already have people going through the apprenticeship who already have a master's degree in something else, but something very niche. We've even got a couple of people with PhDs, and you might think, what? Why are they? Well, it's because they might have a PhD in economics or something, but now they're running a big team in a publishing organization. They're running a big team, they're head of this, and they're feeling kind of inadequate, that they don't understand how organizations work. And that's the rationale behind this, to train up so that we've got more competent and successful people running organizations in this country. Any more questions? Rachel, I've completed the expression of interest. That's great. Do I need to send anything else? Do you need evidence of support qualifications at
Jill,
this
is
stage?
it worth mentioning where this expression of interest sits in terms of the sequence, in terms of like the eligibility check first, and that and the differences between an expression of interest and the eligibility check?
Yeah, so the eligibility check is your step one, and it's on the website. There's no point spending hours getting excited about this and talking to your boss if you haven't got enough management experience, or you've already studied. You've already got the Chartered Manager Institute. You're already a chartered manager. You know, there are a few or you've studied business at master's level already. So there are a few, exclusions. Or you don't spend 50% of your working life in England. So that's step one. And then if you look like you've got through the hoop with that, you contact us or we see your eligibility checker, and we then send you further information about what documents to look out for and what happens next and what conversations you need to have and the letter of support. And then you go back, you have to find your mentor, make sure they understand all that, and then we can then explain to you how to apply on our system come the 8th of May, or you can book a session with us. And it does tell you what certificates you need and things.
I think we've probably got time for a couple more questions. Is it okay? I'm going to pick on one. There's a question about being self-employed. Unfortunately, the apprenticeship levy doesn't cater for people who are self-employed. It's one of those situations where you need to be able to step up to the next level. You need to get exposure across a wide range of experiences, those KSBs, and it's very unlikely you're going to do that within a self-employed organisation. Even if you have an external sponsor, somebody from a larger organisation, even if you end up working for that external sponsor after you finish, our advice would be this: it's not the right time to do this apprenticeship. It's probably best to wait for a time when you're in that sort of organisation where you can be exposed to those other experiences. We believe in right person, right programme, right time. And so from a funding point of view, unfortunately, if you're in a self-employed organisation, there is no provision for the apprenticeship levy. Small SME or large organisation, yes. Self-employed, no, unfortunately. Those are the funding rules. That's not something that we're in control of. But the second thing, more importantly, is to think about the timing and your organisation fit. If you're in an organisation where there are avenues where you could explore and get this other experience, that's probably the best time to start the programme. We believe in setting people up for success. So I am sorry if you're working for a self-employed organisation, this isn't the programme for you at this stage. But if you move to a larger organisation where you're not self-employed, then definitely it's worth considering at that point.
Thanks, Kieran. And then Emma has a question. When do you find out if you are successful? So our next intake is actually starting in April, and those people will have been applying during the winter. Since New Year, they will have had their interviews, and we've just sent out the offer letters. So I'm not sure how many weeks, probably not sure how many weeks that was, to be honest. But for the November programme that we're talking about here, you start applying on the 8th of May. If you apply on the 8th of May, then you're kind of one of the first in the queue to be interviewed. That's how we do it first. So if you apply right at the end of the window of application, which is July, mid-July, then it'll take longer for you to know if you're starting with us in November. So yeah, just a few weeks. It's also when you are available to have an interview. So sometimes there's a bit, if you're going on holiday, it can prolong it. But literally, it's just a few weeks to know whether you're successful or not.
Thanks, Jill. There's one question about Hong Kongers and working in a sort of a startup organisation. Again, some fantastic, sounds like a fantastic opportunity there. Unfortunately, the apprenticeship levy funding is pretty rigid. You've got to be working about 30 hours per week. And the reason for that is that 6 hours equivalent a week. This programme has got defined beginning and end. It runs 18 months. If you're not working 30 hours a week, then finding those equivalent to 6 hours a week is going to be really hard. If you're only working 12 hours a week, that's going to be almost impossible. That's half your working week gone. So for that reason, you've got to be working a minimum of 30 hours a week. Ideally, it's got to be a full-time position. And that's not to be exclusive. We're not trying to rule anybody out. It's about setting people up for success. If you're already in that sort of flexible space of working for a startup on non-fixed hours, then this probably isn't the right time to study. Because remember, this is about studying whilst you work, not instead of the time when you're working. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm sorry, I've got a few people in the chat today who there's great interest in the program, but it doesn't look like those funding rules are going to work for us this particular moment in time.
Right, Abby, do you think we've covered all the questions? You've got your keen eye on the on the flow more than me.
Yeah, I think that's all of the questions answered. So thank you.
Fantastic. Yeah, and you've already put that we send out the slides, so
Yeah.
people don't need to be scribbling everything. So that's great. I think that's enough for this morning, hopefully. So thank you all very much indeed for being interested in the Senior Leader Apprenticeship. Do contact us if you want to, have a Teams call with me as soon as you like. And we wish you a really good Monday. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye.